The first playoff game in 6 years, Max Scherzer on the mound. The Mets lose 7-1. What just happened? We'll discuss it on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, that was about 3 hours I'd like to have back. Max Scherzer takes the mound for the Mets, and there's no reason to dive into a play-by-play of that game because what happened basically is Scherzer dropped the ball. And coming off last weekend where Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer failed to get it done against the Braves, you have this sinking feeling in your stomach as a Mets fan that even though Jacob deGrom is going to take the hill for game 2, we're going to see a repeat of what we saw last weekend. And it's just so frustrating to be in this point where you want to enjoy this season. You want to be the Mets fan that can say, hey, look, 101 wins. I mean, personally, best season of my lifetime. Yet the combination of events over the past month, losing the division to the Braves, and then to have your first playoff game go like that, where Scherzer gets ambushed, you're losing 3-0 early. The Mets have traffic on the bases. They can't do anything to get runners in. It was 1 for 9, I believe, with runners in scoring position the last I checked in that game. So the Mets just had some traffic, unable to do anything with it. And it's a big flop. And I think the one thing that you can take from this game that should make you feel a little bit better, I guess, as a Mets fan, is in the old format, season would be over. This would be an end of the season podcast. It would have been 4-5 seed. That wouldn't even really exist. It wouldn't be a wild card round. It would have been the 2 wild card teams, the Mets and the Padres. The Phillies wouldn't even be here. They just upset the Cardinals today. So good for the Phils, I guess. They might be heading to face the Braves in the next round. But in the old format, this would have been a 1 game off, and that would be it. And that's what we saw in 2016, the last time the Mets were in the playoffs, where it was Mets-Giants, great pitching matchup. Noah Syndergaard showed up in that game a way that Max Scherzer did not in this one. And then you all remember what happened. Connor Gillespie hits the home run. Madison Bumgarner finished the Mets off, and we've been waiting for years since then. So now you have Max Scherzer, $43 million man on the hill. And I don't know if there's an oblique injury we know there was the oblique injury. I don't know if that's still bothering him, and that can explain what's happened over these last couple of starts. But you expect more out of Max Scherzer, and I haven't heard any post-game press conference yet. I'm sure he's going to own it that this was on him. But the bat's got to do more too. So, Scherzer, I think, deflated the Mets because you expected him to go out and match zeros with Yu Darvish, and he didn't. And when that happened, well, it just kind of took all of the win out of the Mets sails, but they got to find a way to put some runs on the board. Jacob deGrom can be amazing tomorrow, and if they can't hit, it won't matter. But there's still reason for hope. And the reason to me is we have been for 6 years screaming and complaining and whining that the Mets have this pitcher, this future Hall of Famer in Jacob deGrom, who hasn't pitched in the playoffs since 2015. Well, at least we're going to see that. And personally, I take some solace in that. I'll discuss why a little bit more in just a minute. But first, the numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use SimpliSafe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who will always have your back. With that monitoring, SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alerts you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. You'll save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan. Get your first month for free by visiting simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. So Jacob deGrom will be on the hill in a playoff game. Last time we saw it, 2015 in the World Series. Prior to that, though, and in the divisional round, Game 5, that was an elimination game we actually saw Jacob deGrom pitch in. He didn't have his best stuff. He found his way through it, and the Mets got a victory that day. I have to hold on to some hope here that Jacob deGrom can deliver for the Mets. And again, I talked about how we've been wanting this as Mets fans for years on this podcast since 2019. How many times, if you've been listening since the beginning, have I said the phrase, it's the biggest shame in baseball is that Jacob deGrom hasn't thrown a pitch in October since 2015. I've talked time and again about wanting deGrom in the playoffs. Now we got it. Now we got that opportunity to see him take the hill, not under the circumstances that we would have liked. It would have been great if Scherzer went out, delivered. The Mets win game 1. Bassett pitches game 2. You don't see deGrom until game, 1 of a DS. That's how the blueprint was supposed to be laid out. Didn't happen like that. Well, now you got deGrom to go in game 2, going up against Blake Snell. Not an easy matchup for the Mets. They've been bad against lefties, but they can come through, get a victory. You push it to a game 3. Anything can happen when you get there. And Chris Bassett could still deliver in that type of a game. It's not the scenario you wanted, but how many times this year have the Mets found a way to win 3-game series? That's why they won 101 games. I still do believe they're the better team here. It's tough, though, because they're not playing their best brand of baseball in September leading into this month. And that's still a good team across on the other side. So we'll see what happens. I will be back tomorrow night, whether it is the Mets eliminated or if it's them holding on to their season for at least one more day. But for now, I'm going to sign off on what was a frustrating night of New York Mets baseball. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.